I've just been reminded of, I missed a house out. There was another one in there somewhere. The house that we first rented in Montague Street in Reading. So yes, even now I'm still in need of reminding things that I should know. So, we left Mel in hospital. Mel had, we must have got to hospital about midnight. 2 in the morning I was sent home, as they do, and then 5:30 you get that phone call. Get here now. And you know when you have a phone call like that, you would normally want to ask why, what's happened, why now, why can't I stay in bed? I only got to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning. But no, it was just that urgency, that just about the right amount of do what you're told, you're good, you need to come and react. And so I remember driving from Heaton Reach to the Luton and Dunstable Hospital, and I couldn't feel my legs. And it was really weird. I remember physically not being able to feel my legs going, how are these pedals moving? Because I can't feel my feet. I really couldn't feel my feet. And it was just that shock, that physical reaction that you have to probably something awful. So somehow I did manage to get there. And I was told that she was on such and such a ward, and I made my way up. And Luton and Dunstable Hospital looks out onto the Dunstable Downs. So it's quite a nice view. And of course, by this time it's going to be 6:30 in the morning. It was very, very early in the morning still. And I remember walking down the ward. I was told to go and wait in the day room, which was right at the end. And as I walked into the day room, the sun was streaming in. This was the 3rd of June, 2003. Hang on, 12th of June 2003. So it was the start of the summer. And the sun was absolutely incredible. And the view was amazing. And I can still remember it now, much like I still remember Mel's skirt when I saw her in view queue up the middle aisle. It was another one of those moments that stays with me. Because a verse popped into my head, and I don't know my Bible very well. I have to keep using concordances, and it takes a long time to find verses, but the verse popped into my head. I look to the hills, where does my help come from? My help comes from you, Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And that had always been a special verse to me, being a scout and a venture scout. I'd always loved the mountains, hence the test for Mel before we got engaged. And to have that verse pop into my head, the maker of the heavens and earth is with me, was calming. And I just felt, okay, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But God is there. He has me in the palm of his hand. There's nothing going to happen that's beyond his capability, beyond his understanding or comprehension. He knows me. He made me. He knows everything about me. So I really did feel at peace. I really was at peace. And the clarity in my mind, it doesn't happen very often where you just feel that you are ready for whatever might happen. You are ready. And the doctor, I couldn't tell you if he was a he or a she. I've got no recollection other than Mel stopped breathing in the middle of the night. We don't know how long she stopped breathing for. She was found unconscious. She's presently in operating theatre. And they're giving her a tracheostomy, connecting her to a ventilator because she can't breathe. Nothing you could do or say, but right, okay. So it was early morning. It must have been about 8 o'clock, because the first thing I did was ring my boss in the yard in Kettering and say, look, Bob, this is what's happened, really bad, what can I do? Send me a mobile phone. And he did. There was a mobile phone waiting for me that day when I got back home, because I knew that whatever happened, I needed to be contactable wherever I was. And the other thing I knew was that my mum was not going to cope well with this at all. So I rang, and fortunately, I think Dad answered the phone, and I asked Mum to pass Dad straight over and explain to him what had happened. Mel's parents had already come to our house. I'd rung to say that Mel was in hospital, so they were already there to look after the boys. They were telling me things like brain surgery, big pressure in the brain, can't operate here, no room, have to send her somewhere else. So from the Luton and Dunstable, Mel went to Stevenage, to the Lister Hospital, and even there they said they couldn't do anything for Mel. So she went down to the Royal Free in London, in North London. So it was a bit of one of those things, and all of this time the pressure's building up in Mel's head, because with meningitis it's a swelling of the lining of the brain, the meninges, and the pressure was getting so extreme in Mel's head that basically the brain shuts down, it can't cope with the pressure, and when the brain shuts down, the lungs stop working and the nerves start getting damaged and all this kind of thing. It's horrible, meningitis. It really is. And fortunately they did this, they put a stent into Mel's head to drain off the excess fluid that had built up, and the pressure started to go away. But Mel was just completely unconscious. She was in a coma. And they were sort of preparing me for the worst. They were telling me, we've taken a scan of Mel's brain. This is what it looks like. And I've seen virtually every bit of Mel apart from her legs. Everything's been scanned, photographed, x-rayed. I could draw you a map of the inside of Mel. It's fascinating, the human body. But this particular bit, they're showing me sort of slices of Mel's head, not the real head, sorry, just whatever it is they do I forget which sort of scope they used. But you could see a little brain and a big black area and the skull. And you think, that don't look right. And they're telling me, well, when you see that much damage to the brain, there's no hope. This person, even if they do wake up, they won't know you. They won't have any capability of humour. They'll have no concept of history, their history or any history. Things are really bad. And by the way, we think you should fill in this purple form. What's this purple form? It's the do not resuscitate form. I said, well, isn't that a bit quick? We don't know. You're telling me this might be what's happening. I was getting frustrated because people were telling me what I should do and how I should react and and I'm a bit awkward like that. If someone tells me what to do, I try to do the opposite. Isn't that right, Mel? Yes. I often will do my best to do the opposite if I possibly can. And I didn't like the way that they were telling me that this is what the outcome would be when Mel was a week or two into her coma. So I was having a lot of travelling to see Mel in London. It was the time of the Harry Potter books, and what can you do? Sat beside a bed with somebody who is unconscious. Nothing. It gets very boring very quickly. So although read Mel the Bible, they're telling me, well, this sort of interaction helps. People can hear even though they're in a coma. And so I was reading Mel the Harry Potter series, and she got so fed up with the Harry Potter series she decided to wake up. It has its benefits, but it was quite interesting. Even then, the doctors didn't really believe that Mel was coming out of her coma, because we would make a noise or a familiar voice, and then you could see although Mel's eyes were shut, her eyelids were shut, you could see the pupils move over to where the noise was coming from. And of course the doctors have seconds to spend with you a day. It's only if you're there consistently talking that it can make the difference. And so it was really hard. I won't pretend it wasn't very difficult, because the boys were 3 years old and 15 months, very much like the photo that you saw previously of Alistair and Cameron by the Christmas tree. They were very much like that. Alistair was still being breastfed. He wouldn't drink milk. He was on the good stuff still. He didn't want any of this cow stuff. Ugh. Want the good gear. And then parents want to be kept informed. We were part of a very big church. They all wanted to know what was going on. My boss was brilliant. He really was very hands-off. But I tried to keep him up to date. There was a lot going on. And I remember partway through when Mel was still in a coma, the youth pastor came to visit me because I was still very young, mid-20s. Maybe, no, it was worse than that, wasn't it? But anyway, the youth pastor still had an affinity with me because I was still young at heart. And we were praying. And I remember coming to that conclusion that I had absolutely no control. None whatsoever. It was out of my hands. Really, nothing I could do. I turn up, I do the bits that I can, but really I was helpless. And I said to God, Lord, your will be done. You know what's best. Your will be done. You can take her or you can leave her with us. I really don't mind. Obviously, I have a preference, but, it's not up to me. I recognise that I had nothing, there was nothing in me. And this is where my first sermon kicks in. It's this sovereignty of God. It's this, God, you are in control. And I never questioned him. I've never had an argument with God about the situation that we're in. There's no point. Because God is in control. He will work out what he will work out, and I'm along for the ride. I do what I can, but I'm following how he's leading. It's not fatalism, it's realism. He knows what he's going to do. And I trust him. And that's where I was. And that was so liberating, to be able to pray that prayer, to just be able to say, look, God, over to you. I've got nothing left in me that's going to make a difference to this. So Mel was in her coma for at least 6 weeks. I have difficulty remembering exactly what it was. But I remember shortly after Mel came out of her coma, hearing one of the nurses talking to somebody else on the ward about, people like Mel can go home and be cared for at home. And it was that light bulb moment, absolute light bulb moment, that gave me the idea that actually Mel will come home. And from that point on, I didn't let on that I'd overheard this conversation. But I said, and of course Mel will be coming home. And they all looked at me like I'm a bit stupid. But that was what I had decided at that point, that Mel would be coming home. And of course Mel was still in London at the Royal Free. And then after a month or two, Mel came back to Leighton Buzzard. Sorry, not to Leighton Buzzard, back to the hospital in Luton. But we had some amazing friends. Don't go any further. We had a lot of good friends at church. And my previous boss, a chap called Kevin Ward, he looked after the kids. He and his wife and their daughters looked after the kids so much. It was great. Because we were still living in Leighton Buzzard at the time. And so the kids went to steam rallies, and Cameron even helped Kevin build his extension. There he is, putting in a wall tie. Cameron learning engineering from a young age. That's why he likes history so much now. I blame Kevin for that. But there we go. So it was a lot of juggling, but God provided. Dinners coming through the door. People ringing up. Can we look after the children? Yes, please. You don't have to ask twice. So that I could be wherever I needed to be. Eventually we managed to sell the house and move to Thrapston. But Mel was still in hospital. And so I had moved out of my support network here. Obviously I had to go back to work at some point as well. It was one of those things. It really was a real step of faith, leaving the comfort of a church of 400 to come to Thrapston where I knew nobody. Although Joyce did turn up the day we moved in with a big chocolate cake, so they helped. God has really undertaken for those children, considering really what they've been through. They've turned out fairly well. Sometimes we get the odd explosion that we weren't expecting, but I think that may be just teenage boys. But really, God has helped so much with the settling of them wherever they go. They stayed with so many people, visited so many people, went off with people. It was quite a challenge, but happily we had an endowment mortgage that was failing at the time as well, just to throw into the mix. And then a friend of ours who was a financial advisor said, "Didn't you have critical illness cover on that policy?" "I don't know." So that paid out. So God funded the move as well, because there was no way it was ever going to really work. And then we had the Court of Protection, and they're a lovely, lovely bunch if ever you have to deal with them. Put your life on hold for 2 years as soon as the Court of Protection kick in. They're interesting people. But in that, all these difficulties, I had a phone call, and it was a speech and language therapist at Luton, Dunstable Hospital, and she rang me at work, and she said, "I got a message from Mel." And we had no way of communicating with Mel, no idea at all. We would go and visit Mel, but we just went to see her. And they had a conversation, this speech and language therapist, with Mel, because they worked out that there was somebody in there. And they said, what do you miss? And Mel spelt out, chocolate. Yeah, laughing down here. And how do you feel? Spoiled. No, it wasn't spoiled, it was pampered. Pick a hard word to spell, pampered. And do you have a message for your husband and your children? Love. And so those 3 words showed us that actually there was somebody home inside that shell. And so they were able to start to check what the original predictions were going to be like. So classic one is they sent somebody from the Court of Protection to see if Mel was mentally capable. And she was asked the question, who was the last president of the United States of America? I'm there going, for goodness sake. Was it Bush? Was it Reagan? Was it Thatcher? I don't know. And Mel spelt out Obama. And I was like, she's right. Because this is Obama's 2nd term. Yes, keep going now. And he had all these, what's the greatest technological advancement in the last 10 years? And this is someone who's out of a coma. iPod. Where did you get married? Hitchin. She could answer all of these questions that, she shouldn't be able to answer. And Mel's sense of humour is wicked. When she catches you, you're spelling, I've got the O, and then she's grinning at you, and things that, nothing wrong. So Mel's completely physically knackered, but mentally sharp. And that was the big concern, because I still have the woman I married, albeit the body's a little bit broken, but the person that I married is still in there. And more importantly, she still can go to a coffee shop. That's the most expensive cup of coffee ever served in a hospital, because we had a consultant from A&E, we had a physiotherapist, the speech and language therapist, that was the lady that ran us. We had a consultant anaesthetist and one of the ITU nurses. That was an expensive trip to the coffee shop, just for the hourly rate alone. It was, but why not? And it was things like that gave me these ideas. Why can't Mel just be normal and completely abnormal at the same time? Why not? And so we carried on. Other crazy things happened. You're like, Mel may or may not like this picture. Ta-da! You took a picture of Mel when she was in hospital. She always looked really startled. But those are her friends. Her friends went and sang ABBA to the ICU ward. They were dancing on a bed with the pinnies all tied round them, and oh dear, they had a great time. Her friend came all the way over from Jersey to sing to her, because that's the love that Mel has from her friends. So very silly, and they still come and see Mel, which is great. Mel still has friends from university days. And then from the ICU in Putney, I think that's going to jump another slide. From the ICU in Leighton Buzzard, Mel went to Putney. Now it's really interesting. When you move from one place to another place, you're in financial limbo land. Nobody knows who's responsible for you. And so this worked out to our advantage, because the people in Bedfordshire wanted to get rid of Mel because they didn't want to have to fund Mel's very, very, very expensive care. And the people in Northamptonshire had to do something about it because we were now living in their patch. So we could dip into both pots of money for Mel to come home, which is, I didn't plan it that way. If I had planned it that way, that would have been the way I would have planned it. But God was working his way as he does. So I was travelling to Putney 2 days a week, one of those days with the boys. And we were hoping that Mel would get off a ventilator and things like that, and it didn't happen. And that was Mel's bedroom. She never saw this view of the hospital because she was always inside it. Believe it or not, when you used to go into the hospital, you had to go through the wrought iron gate that said, "The Hospital for the Incurables." And this is where I was taking Mel. And I thought, it looked like a Victorian asylum because it had the big high ceilings and the doors and the locks and everything. It was amazing. But the rehab was fantastic. Mel was taught how to use a computer. They worked out there was a system of communication that we could use, which we still use. There's all sorts of adaptive technology we tried. And all of this time that Mel was there, we were getting our house converted, ready to take her. And you know what? The thing that was holding everything back was solved by a tower crane risk assessment. It's amazing what a tower crane risk assessment can do, because these guys would come with all sorts of problems about Mel coming home, and I was not having that. So I took a tower crane risk assessment, I deleted all the bits that were related to tower cranes, and I started putting all the problems in that they said Mel had a problem with. And so that's the problem, that's the fix. Did it really fix it? Yes. Of course, it was always going to say yes. And so I went through every single thing that they moaned about, and I fixed it with, either I fixed it or somebody else had to pay for something that was going to fix it. And that's how we got Mel home. The tricky part is that when you're in effectively a private hospital like this, not funded by us, I must add, they won't take responsibility for anything. And so we had a team of staff that needed training, but nowhere to train them, because you can't train them in somebody else's hospital. And no NHS hospital was prepared to take Mel because she's an ICU patient and she's going to block a bed for months. So we were in this crazy world of, Mandy is still here with us. Mandy trained in Putney. I did get the right bedroom window, you know. So Mandy is still our final original from 2005, 4, 5, 5, 6, 5, 2005. Yeah. So Mandy went through this. Well, when's Mel ever going to come home? We lost 3 teams of people trying to get Mel home because they were being awkward about who was going to train and who was going to take responsibility. I mean, I was saying, it's fine, I'll take responsibility, and I'm competent to take responsibility because I can do all of Mel's care, so I know if they're doing it wrong. But that wasn't good enough either. And this is where it gets interesting, because Mel was a poster girl for the Meningitis Trust. Oh, here you go, here's some nice pictures. This is Alistair bouncing on a bed. This was Mel's room in hospital. And then I think I clicked it. It didn't happen. I'm going to click again. Mel smiling. Please take me home. And then Mel would come home periodically. While she was in hospital, we could rent an ambulance and bring her home. So Alistair really ought to work on his smile, I think. I've clicked it many times, it hasn't moved. I fear what's going to happen next. In the process of bringing Mel home, we did some fundraising at the Law Society. In London, we had a ball and an auction and things like that, and it helped pay for the van. Mike's old boss did some fundraising through our suppliers in the yard, also to help raise money for all of these things that we needed to get Mel home. Darn it. It doesn't like me at all, this thing. Right, so the first thing we did, in fact, the most recent thing that the meningitis had success about was getting the meningitis jabs introduced into the into the babies' immunisations. And Mel was part of the original push for that, and that was 2005. The 21st of September 2005 was when that was kicking off. So Mel was in on that from the start. And then every year, around about the autumn time, Mel would be sort of wheeled out, photographed and put back in the cupboard again until they needed us the next year. That's what it feels like anyway. But you know what? It's great because about the time that we were trying to get out in the autumn of 2005, oh, this clicker in me, I'm not getting on. Can you go back one? I'm mad enough for this clicker. Spend more time looking at that. Right. They wanted a story about meningitis. They rang me up and I said, oh, thank you for ringing. And the old light bulb went on again. I'm having difficulty getting my wife out of hospital. But it was a story about meningitis, honest. But the paper got hold of this, and I went to the meeting. There was a crunch meeting about to happen because nobody was taking any responsibility for anything. So I bought everybody a copy of the newspaper. And I went in with this, it came out that day, the day of the meeting, God's timing again, and I put the paper in front of each of them. I said, the press are quite interested in Mel coming out of hospital. You know, for once the press can be on my side. And so, funny how they unconstipated themselves. And then if you can put the next one on. So that was, I think, in September. And then Mel came home. So this was October, the end of October 2005. October 2005. So it was incredible. We managed to escape hospital. We come out with our staff. But God had his timing and his purposes in everything that had happened. It was all going well. Mel had been in hospital for 870 days. It took that long to get Mel back from hospital. And so we were back to whatever was normal life. And we were a weird bunch. We don't get invited out to lunch very often because we travel as a pack. You know, we come in, we're like locusts that descend on your house and it's devastating. We crash into doors and walls and cabinets and anything else that you might imagine. And I thought the hard part was getting Mel out of hospital. But actually the challenging part has been adapting life around Mel, because Mel has to have life adapted around her. And Mel won't always tell you why she does what she does. Mel has ways and she doesn't like to tell you why. And it's taken a long time for me to work out, being the observant male that I am. But God has helped me understand Mel better, I think, through the last few years. I've worked out that Mel hates hospital. She'll do anything to get out of going to hospital. I've worked out that Mel hates oxygen. And as soon as you threaten her with an oxygen bottle, it makes her go dizzy and feel sick. So she hates oxygen. She was stuck on oxygen in hospital for months and months and months. And these are all reminders back to the dark days. Mel wants to be a normal mum. Mel wants to be able to hug a sick child and go upstairs when it's crying and screaming and ranting and sort it out, whatever it might be. Mel wants to go to parents' evenings and to go and listen to some inane thing about the latest school trip that they're going to go on. Mel loves it because she wants to be a mum. And it's taken a long time for me to work. Actually, Mel wants to do those really dull things that mums have to do because it's being a mum. And it took a long time for me to work that out. So that means actually now parents' evenings at Prince William School, the teachers have to come down to us now because they're upstairs sometimes. They will work out in the end what they need to do. But it's things like that. It's actually saying, do you know what? No, you come to Mel. Please, just let's do it properly. So my empathy skills have gotten better, but not perfect. Ooh, thinking about that one. And we have had some successful, very short holidays, but we've been away, and that's been great. But it's only possible because of the gang that we have. And people say, you know, it's amazing what you can do. Well, yeah, but they do all the hard work, really. And we've got 2 current ones and an ex-one sat with Mel at the moment. But it's only possible because the PCT fund those guys. I couldn't afford to pay for them. It's incredible what we can do with the support that we have. But that's all God providing. One of the darker days for me was about 3 years ago, I think it was. And I found this very difficult. I was invited to a 40th birthday party. One of my friends from university doesn't live too far from here. And I went to the party. Mel had been very sick that day. And I was thinking, probably don't really want to go because Mel's not well. And we had new carers on that night. And getting Mel comfortable was very difficult. So I was going to have a very short stay, and there's all this sort of going on in the back of my mind. And I walked in, and it's nice to see all my university friends. And I start talking to them. What have you been up to? What's happening in your world? And I was hearing stories of holidays abroad and fantastic jobs and opportunities galore and children doing this and all these sorts of things. And I went back and I sat in the car. And I went, I don't have any of those things. My life is different. I can't, my wife isn't there to do this and that and the other thing, and we can't go and do all these nice holidays. And it was a real shock because we were living in the Melly bubble. We were doing things that Mel needs to do. Our world had contracted to the care that we have to provide. And that was really hard to realise that there's normal life out there and I can't have it. And that was really, really shocking. And that took me a couple of months to get over that sort of grieving process, because it just hadn't occurred to me that life will never be the same again. It really wasn't going to be the same again. And again, I think God was with me through that time of kind of letting go to the old way of doing things. And that was hard. That was really very difficult to have to face that it wasn't going to be like that ever again. And my little letting go, think about what Mel's had to let go of. And that was a big prick in my side when I thought, come on, selfish Hook. What about the other Hook in the family who's had to give up everything? You think, get some perspective, boy. But that didn't help at the time. But, after a while I sort of thought about it. But that will happen to you, I'm sure, with the things that you go through in your lives. You have to let go of things. Children, situations, jobs, whatever it might be. You just have to let go. Now we're on to the really interesting stuff. This is the best bit. What do you see? No. St Paul's Cathedral. I was supposed to say the crane. You were supposed to say St Paul's Cathedral. I run a small department of engineers and draftsmen, the mechanical engineering department, in the yard in Kettering. I work for Sir Robert McAlpine. And we specialise in stupid things, really. We do a lot of stupid things. So I see that picture and I go, I hope they did the bolts up on that tower crane right, or the pins are in properly on the right way round, that kind of thing. I tried to put Alistair off engineering by taking him on a day full of site visits, and I fear he's got the bug. So we put that crane is sat on top of a building that's 8 stories tall, so it's just sitting on virtually, it's on top of the building. But, we do silly things with hoists. It's just what I do. It means something to me, nothing to you. So we come up with all of the logistic plans for a construction project. We draw where the tower cranes go, where the hoists go, how you're going to move your stuff from there all the way over there. We do all that kind of thing. The most recent, in the early days, it was cutting edge. On the right-hand side at the top is some steel. Just trust me, it's steel. And the crane bolts to that bit of steel, and that bit of steel sits on top of some concrete, like over on the right-hand side there. So that is 120 metres in the air, I think, if I remember rightly, that one on the right-hand side. So it went from that to that, and now this one on the left-hand side, soon it's set on top of Selfridges in the middle of London. That crane base will appear with a tower crane sat on it. And that building was built in the 1950s, the 1930s, and the early 1900s at the bottom. We believe the building is strong enough to take the crane. We'll soon find out, you know. They've built the two top bits, and this bit is being built at the moment, and the guys are going to go and see it on Tuesday to see if it looks about right. If it doesn't look about right, I might be needing a new job. But that's what we do. We do weird stuff on buildings to put cranes where they couldn't possibly go. But that's what we do, and we seem to be doing it okay. I sit on really exciting committees. The Construction Hoist Interest Group. Oh, that's the one. We talk about hoist. Mel's got that face she pulls. Mel pulls this face when I talk about it. But that's, you know, that's what I do. I started off putting tunnel eyes in the wrong place, and now I put cranes in stupid places. So that's what we do. And this is one of my favourite pictures. That is a proper skyline. When the news comes on and there's an interview in central London, we get pause. Mel, that's my crane. Sorry. There's lots of mine there. Ignore the white ones, they're the wrong colour. The green ones, they're fine. That's one of our projects in London at the moment, called Bloomberg. Mel's still screaming, is she? Sorry. I'll move on quickly. Mel doesn't like this sort of thing. But God made me an engineer. He made me passionate about construction. I don't know why. But I think it was for a reason. And I think it was for this. It was for this time. It was for what we were going to have to face. Because the engineering brain solves problems. It finds answers to solutions to problems. That's what I do. Very briefly, we had a problem with trying to build our extension. There was an obstructive individual in the PCT saying that it was not, you can't go and, Mel can't stay in Kettering at a perfectly purpose-built place. She's going to be sent to Daventry. And if Mel gets sent to Daventry, then all of these poor people can't work with Mel because it's too far for them to travel to work. So Mel's care team were going to collapse. And Mel was actually going to be stuck in Daventry and probably very difficult to get back again. So why would you do that? So this didn't make sense. And then I found out that this particular individual had made a man, husband and wife. The wife had a similar situation to Mel, and she was moved to Daventry. When he was able to, he had to go on the bus from somewhere, Corby, to Wellingborough to see her. And when he was with her, she was well. And when he wasn't there, she was unwell. And they moved her to Daventry. He couldn't see her anymore. That really got me. It wasn't because Mel couldn't go there. It was because he couldn't see his wife. That really upset me. So I made that my mission to get that lady to open up this unit in Kettering. Because the people that looked after Mel, that company, owned the unit. So they were paying for Mel's care at home, but they wouldn't allow Mel to be cared for in a purpose-built unit. And they were going to charge for 2 bedrooms, so one for the staff and one for Mel, £100 a day. Doesn't make sense. So, cut long story short, I went for, solving this problem. So I had to go through every single silly thing that she threw at me to sort it out. And it turned out that I think she had a bit of a history of this, and she left, I think, before she was pushed, because I got the CQC involved, because this was silly. But God, I couldn't get my mortgage sorted out as well, and it was all sorts of things were going wrong. But they came together with that God perfect timing at the same time as the builder came available. That was one of those things. So all of this is giving me confidence. God knows what he's doing. He's really in charge. I'm going to skip a bit because time's running on. You get the feeling that me and God, we sort of get on and things sort of work out, usually, really very well. And then something happened in October of 2014. It was the day before my father's birthday. And Mel had been unwell for a couple of weeks. Just not right. We could all see Mel was not well. There's something not right. Doctor's been out a few times, can't tell what's going on. And they had to do a number of Mel has certain procedures that they can do on her at home to save her going to hospital. And one of them went wrong. There's a tube that they feed Mel through, and it didn't quite go back where it should. It just didn't feel right. So Mel was to be admitted to the hospital to try and sort out what was going on. And I was aware of it, and time was ticking on, and they couldn't get an ambulance, and all the usual problems that we have when we try to get Mel admitted to hospital. And it got to about 5 o'clock, and I had one of those phone calls. Craig, get to the hospital now. So I left. You know, it was that tone of voice again. And so I made my way to the hospital. I think we were supposed to be having a leaders meeting that night, and because Mel was going to be admitted, I thought, well, I better get Mel's mum and dad over to sort the boys out. So I cancelled the leaders meeting, or my attendance at it. Joan and Jeff were on the way. And I get to the hospital, and I walk past carers that are, faces are down at the floor and eyes a bit red, and I'm thinking, that's not good. They don't normally look like that. And I'm put straight into the waiting room for bad news. You know, when there's bad news on the door, you kind of know. And I'm sat there, and this is where I'm presented with a dilemma that we had at the beginning. Initially there was, I don't know, probably 4 people. And they're giving me this statement that basically Mel is unconscious. She cannot be roused. They've done a scan, and they can see lots of fluid where it shouldn't be. And they think they can see bubbles in the bowel, and if you can see bubbles in the bowel and fluid outside of the bowel, you've got a ruptured bowel, and that's really bad because there's poison swimming around inside you, just waiting to try and get out into the bloodstream. So as soon as they make any incision to try and sort anything out, the poison goes straight into the bloodstream. You can't stop it. Whatever you do, it's in there, and that's pretty much the end. So the consultant is very clear about this. You know, if you do something, she's going to die. If you don't do something, she's going to die. To put it very bluntly, and that's really what they did. That's what they were good at. And the thing that got me, though, and this is God again, the consultant said, and Mel's quality of life is very poor. What? Oh, you don't know what she gets up to. We do. Because people look on the outside and they go, what a hopeless case. But she is not a hopeless case. Mel is phenomenal, as you know. Things that she does, the places she goes to. Mel's horizons have shrunk significantly, but she still has horizons and ideas and goals that she wants to participate in. And so I said, no, we'll do the operation. And they really weren't expecting that. No, we'll do the operation. Okay, we'll get Mr. Ebdui, and he's the consultant surgeon. And so he came in with yet more people. So there's a proper party now. So I said, right, well, I'm going to get Kathy. And Kathy's our nurse. So Kathy came in. And they told the same story again. And I think they thought that by bringing Mr. Ebdui in, you know, you've got the big guns now. No. We'll proceed. And we had quite a good discussion, given the gravity of the situation. I really felt peaceful. I felt that God was in control. I really did. It was one of those things where life was very tough, but God was in control. And this decision was really all on me. And if I made the wrong decision, I'd have to live with it. And I'd hear from my mother-in-law. And she's not shy at telling me what she thinks. And that's fine, because she's got Mel's back. Ultimately, she's got Mel's back as well. So I had to make this decision, and I said, no, we'll carry on. You've been telling me you've been watching these markers in Mel's blood. This is what I think. If the markers are getting better, then we do nothing. Obviously, Mel's getting better. But if the markers are the same or going downhill, then you operate. Okay. And as he was just going to go out of the room, I said, Mr. Ebdui, I believe that God will control your hands. and the outcome will be the right outcome. And this is clearly a Muslim chap turned and looked at me, and we had that connection. I also believe in God, and I agree. So that was incredible. I don't have that courage normally to do something like that, but I just felt that was right. And so he went, and I saw Mel, and I'm poking Mel, like, come on, wake up, I don't want to make this decision, you make this decision. Pulling Mel's ear, pulling her nose, poking her face, pinching. She looked like she'd been in a fight with Mike Tyson after I'd finished with her. But she wouldn't wake up, she was properly out. So 10 o'clock, Mel went up to the theatre, and I'm in the corridor outside the operating theatres at Kettering General Hospital, and they used to have a big clock, and it didn't tick, it went clonk, clonk, clonk. You do that for 3 hours, clonk. And people would come scurrying out of the theatre, go into the surgical stores and come back again. I had to go and work out why they kept going in that room. I thought it might be like that was the smoking room or something. But it was the stores. It said it was the stores anyway. And at 1 o'clock, Mr. Abdui comes out in his jeans and there's biker jacket. Anyway, okay. And he shook me by the hand. Mr. Hook, that was a good decision, well made, she would have died. And then they had to take out a big chunk of Mel's bowel. They took out 6 pints of poison from the body cavity. And Mel had a lot of air in her bowel, and they couldn't close her up, so they had to take out most of her intestines and give her a colostomy bag. But Mel was going to need that anyway. At some point in the future, we all had money on her needing this operation. And Mel doesn't do hospitals very well. So Mel was admitted to hospital for something she would have been needing doing anyway. They fixed 2 or 3 things at the same time. And Mel didn't know what was going on. She didn't have any of the stress and worry that she can get really sick on stress and worry. So this was perfect. God's timing and God's hand over it all. And all I had to do was kind of cling on to what God was up to. God has always done that. He's always brought me to that point to make a decision. And it was the only decision that could be made, really. So we just have to be faithful. We just have to take those little steps that God leads us to. So, in sort of conclusion, because it is time to conclude, I really do believe that God works out whatever it is for those that love him. And Mel clearly loves God. Clearly loves him. So he is always working something out. It's, I've always been along for the ride, really. Mel has always been the one that has been leading the way. I'm always behind her pushing. But Mel's always saying where she wants to go. We continue to try to get away and to do things. Mel continues to be involved in the Meningitis Trust. And in fact, BBC Radio Northampton tomorrow morning, there's a big thing about meningitis again. So we'll be on the radio again tomorrow morning. Because they're having a big debate tomorrow in Parliament about meningitis and about extending the vaccination programme across a broader range of the population. And Mel enjoys doing these things. Mel wants other people not to have the problem that she has had. And our story is, as I said, it's intertwined. You can't have one without the other. We are very much travel as a pair, I think. But what I would encourage you to think about is that your life will hit those slippery sections where you suddenly lose control. Guaranteed. Some of you here I know have had those situations in your lives, these times of testing, of trial, of uncertainty, of sickness, of near death. And the real help that you can find is in Christ. God has really sustained us. And I stand here before you to attest to that in a way. God has impacted my life in a very positive way. You might think, very positive way. But he has. He has worked out his plans. But the really encouraging thing is, you only need faith about that big, which is a mustard seed. You only need that much. And little by little, God grows it into something else. I don't know what size tree I am yet. I can't tell. I haven't finished growing. But, it's amazing. God just needs that much. And little by little, he grows you. Just little steps, little answers, little things here and there. 43 years I've been wandering along on this earth. And I'm hoping I'll at least see the final 25 years at McAlpines anyway. I've done 25, I've got 25 to go. But God has been there through it all. And I'm hoping that you sort of got the flavour of what our life has been, and hopefully the way it will continue. So I suppose I would encourage you is to trust him, because we've trusted him and we've found him trustworthy, and I'm sure you will also find him trustworthy. Thank you for listening. It's now 5 to 8. I've whittled on a bit. I hope you didn't have plans and dinners in the oven and things like that have been ruined. If you want to ask me some questions, we'll have a little bit of time now. Otherwise, you can catch me later. We're not disappearing straight away. Over to you. Oh, good, they're bored. Let's go home. Are there any questions, or else Mel's late for bed already? I'll be in trouble later. Yes?
Does it take the boys long to learn the communication?
One of them will communicate quite well, the other one is too lazy. He's a boy, he just can't be bothered. He could if he could be bothered. It's Dad.
I have one of those.
Yeah, they can if they want to. Obviously, one of the things that Mel really would like to be able to do is to communicate with people.
Yeah.
But the trouble we have is that it's quite peculiar the way we speak. And we have tried talking computers, but we don't find they work very well for a number of reasons. But we probably ought to try again, so that Mel can tell me off even more. Tell me off even more? Maybe not. No, she said promises, no.
Great, it's a very powerful story, thank you very much. To think that your faith didn't waver up until, I think you said 3 years ago.
Yes.
Is incredible.
Yeah.
That's probably what I find
Yeah.
the most amazing thing about what you spoke about tonight.
And one of the things I find particularly odd is the fact that I've never had that thing. I keep reading about people getting angry with God. I've never done that, and I don't know why. Perhaps it's because I'm so passive. I walk over. I don't know. I've never seen the point. Really, I don't see the point getting angry with God, because it serves no purpose, in my opinion. I know in the Bible there's lots of stories of people getting angry with God, but I don't think it would have changed the outcome at all. Mel's the one that gets passionate in our house. Go on.
Are Mel's parents Christians?
No, and in fact this is a real problem for them. The fact that we're still Christians in spite of everything that God's done to us, or God's allowed to happen. They can't get over it. It's a big problem. They haven't said anything to me, but they've said it to Alistair, our youngest. Alistair, I think, put them right though. He's a good lad like that. He takes no prisoners. Any other questions?
Like his mum then?
Pretty much like he is very much mini Mel. Yeah. They're very stubborn people when they get in the room together and they both decide the opposite of what the other one wants. It's interesting, isn't it? Mel normally waits. Go on, yes.
How does Mel use the computer?
We've worked out that Mel's a social computer user. So actually, she could use a chin switch, and it will go through a series of menus and allow her to do things and to navigate around on the screen. But Mel would rather use the carer's fingers. And so they do like crosswords and internet shopping. So they pick dresses and they come and they don't fit and they go back and that kind of thing. But in a way, because Mel has carers, the social aspect is actually quite nice. So it's not really been a problem that Mel, it's very slow. The technology is really... If Mel could only move a finger, just one finger, would be amazing, because she could do so much with just that one finger. But Mel would rather have legs Actually, that was if Mel could have one thing, she said it's legs. I'd have gone for voice personally, but that's my preference because I like to talk, as you can tell. Are there any other questions? I think you can go home. Unless Matt wants to say something.
Craig, I just want to thank you for what you've shared with us tonight. I've been back there and I've just been very moved by what you shared, and it encourages me. And it's just wonderful to hear that. Thank you for sharing that, Mel. Thank you for being a part of, adding some dimension to our understanding, and testifying to God in working in real lives, in real situations, and it's not always neat and tidy, it's just encouraging to find God in the mess of life, and I want to thank you for that. Let's just give Craig another round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Do stay and chat for a few moments, and we should be having another event in June, and we will let you know if you'd like to join us on that occasion. We'll publicise it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.